The real reason Martina Hingis vanished from tennis overnight. She walked to the podium in Zurich on November 1, 2007, and the cameras caught something the tennis world had rarely seen. Her voice breaking. Not from defeat, not from injury. From something she could not prove had not happened. She had tested positive for cocaine at Wimbledon, and she was announcing her retirement from professional tennis in the same breath that she denied ever touching the drug. The press conference lasted minutes. She read her statement. She took no questions. She left. That was it. One of the most tactically gifted players in the history of women's tennis. Gone. Hingis had managed to stay at the top of women's tennis for a total of 209 weeks as world number one. She had won 5 Grand Slam singles titles before most of her rivals had finished high school. She became the youngest ever world number one in 1997 at just 16 years and 182 days old. The numbers are not the story. The numbers are only what made the fall harder to explain, because the question was never whether she was great. The question was what happens to a person who has been shaped entirely around greatness, and what they become when the machine stops. After her parents divorced when she was 6, Hingis and her mother defected from Czechoslovakia in 1987, choosing to relocate to Switzerland. She was 7 years old. She did not speak the language. She did not know anyone. She was upset, crying, unable to understand anything around her. What she had was her mother, and her mother had a plan. That displacement is why she became closer to her mother, because they only had the two of them. Melanie Molitor was not simply a stage parent with ambition and a clipboard. She had been a ranked tennis player herself in Czechoslovakia. She understood the game at a structural level, and she began coaching her daughter at age 2. She guided the young prodigy to 5 Grand Slam singles titles by the age of 18, becoming Hingis's constant companion at tournaments. Every match, every city, every court. The mother was always there. That closeness was also the architecture of a dependency that neither of them could fully name. Molitor may have grimly directed her daughter through regimented training sessions, but she accommodated Hingis's horseback riding, various romances, and remarkable warmth toward her toughest rivals. From the outside, it looked like balance. It looked like chemistry. Then came Paris, 1999, and the model began to show its seams. The 1999 French Open final should have been a milestone. Instead, it became a public unraveling. Hingis crossed the net to question a line call, then kept arguing with the umpire, and even attempted an underarm serve at a critical point. The French crowd turned on her. The booing was loud, sustained, and eventually forced Hingis to say that without her mother, she would not have returned to the court to collect her runner-up trophy. Something cracked that day, not Hingis's composure alone. The relationship. At Wimbledon that same year, for the first time since 1994, Molitor was conspicuously absent from her daughter's box. Hingis admitted it had made a pretty big difference. She lost in the first round to an unranked qualifier at 18 years old, the youngest number one in history, gone in the opening round of Wimbledon without her mother watching. Chris Evert, who had been a mentor to Hingis, put it plainly, things had happened too easily for Martina her whole career. This was the first time she had faced adversity. That was not the full truth. The full truth was that Hingis had never been allowed to develop the tools for adversity because adversity had always been managed for her. Her mother had been the buffer between Martina and every difficult thing. When that buffer shifted, even briefly, the person inside it had no architecture of her own to stand on. By April 2001, at the age of 21, Hingis found her mother's constant presence stifling and officially split from her as coach. She told reporters she needed independence, that she wanted to handle challenging situations on her own, that her mother would no longer travel with her on tour. It was the right instinct. It came too late. The body began to go next. In 2001, she underwent ankle surgery but reached the finals at the 2002 Australian Open. Plagued by further injuries, Hingis retired in 2003. She was 22 years old. She had won everything worth winning and could not walk without pain. She said she wanted to concentrate on her equestrian interests and complete her education. That was technically true, but the harder truth was that a body put into professional service at age 14, trained before it was fully formed, pressed into competition before it had developed the structural resilience of maturity, had been spent. The career that produced those 5 Grand Slam titles before her 19th birthday also shortened the career available to her after it. She had not been exploited in the traditional sense. She had been loved. That can cost just as much. In 2006, Hingis mounted a full comeback, breaking into the top 10 by the end of that same year. She was 25. She was ranked 7th in the world. She was doing the thing she had been built to do, and doing it well enough that the tour noticed. Then came Wimbledon 2007, a third-round loss to an American ranked outside the top 100. A urine sample, a positive result for a metabolite of cocaine. She was shocked and appalled. Under guidance from her family and management, she underwent a privately arranged hair test, which came back negative. The official backup sample, however, tested positive. Here is what the public record contains, without editorializing, two conflicting test results, a urine sample and a hair sample pointing in opposite directions. Her lawyer found various inconsistencies with the urine sample and believed the doping officials had mishandled the process. An independent anti-doping tribunal found that Hingis had committed a doping offense, rejected suggestions of doubt over the sample, and issued a 2-year ban. She did not fight it. That decision, the decision not to fight, is where this story gets quiet in a way that deserves attention. She had no desire, she said, to spend the next several years of her life reduced to fighting against the doping officials. She was 27. Her body was already compromised. A broken engagement to fellow tennis player Radek Stepanek had ended only months before. The institutional machinery of an anti-doping appeal would have taken years and delivered no certainty even at its conclusion. Some people walk away because they are guilty. Some people walk away because they have already been worn down to nothing, and the cost of the fight is a life they no longer have access to. The record does not tell us which category applies here. The record only tells us she walked away. She returned to the sport in 2013 and excelled as a doubles specialist before hanging up her racket for the final time in 2017. Since 2014, she won 27 WTA titles in women's doubles. She retired ranked world number 1 in the discipline 19 years after she first held that position. The ending was dignified. The ending was even triumphant by certain measures. But the disappearance of 2007 was not really about cocaine. It was about a career that had been constructed on an architecture too fragile to sustain the weight placed on it. A child made into a machine, a mother made into a system, a body asked to perform at the level of a grown professional before it had finished becoming one. The drug test was the proximate cause. What made the exit feel so sudden was that the structure had been compromised for years before anyone named it. After receiving the ban, Hingis said that they changed the rules after her, and that tells the whole story. She was referring to procedural changes in anti-doping protocols. She may have meant something broader. What gets built around a prodigy is rarely built for the prodigy's benefit. It is built for the result. And when the result becomes impossible, through injury, through age, through a positive test that may or may not reflect the truth, the structure does not mourn. It simply moves on. The player is left standing at the podium in Zurich, voice breaking, trying to explain something that the evidence does not fully support and the absence of evidence does not fully deny, trying to convince a room of journalists and cameras that she is who she has always said she was. She read her statement. She took no questions. She left.